In 2560 BC, a worker fell into a hidden shaft beneath the desert floor and was never seen again. His body was never recovered. The shaft was sealed and erased from every official record. That disappearance was not an accident. It was a warning. The ancient Egyptians did not build downward by accident. They built a world beneath the pyramid before they built the pyramid itself. Thousands of men carved into the living rock below the Giza plateau before a single stone was placed above ground. What they found and what they were ordered to bury changed everything. Most people think the Great Pyramid is a tomb. They are wrong. The structure above ground is only half the story. What lies beneath the surface is older, stranger, and far more dangerous than anything historians have been willing to admit. This is the story they buried with the sand. Before the first limestone block was ever set in place, teams of workers were already underground. They had been there for years. The subterranean chamber beneath the Great Pyramid was not an afterthought. It was the beginning. It was the foundation of everything, and it remains one of the most mysterious spaces ever carved by human hands. The subterranean chamber sits approximately 100 feet below the base of the pyramid. It was cut directly into the bedrock of the Giza plateau, and it was never finished. That is the detail that no one can explain. After all the effort, all the death, all the impossible labor of carving through solid limestone, the workers stopped. They abandoned the chamber. They left their tools. They sealed the entrance. And Pharaoh Khufu never explained why. What were they afraid of finding? To understand what lies beneath, you need to understand what it took to get there. The descending passage leading to the subterranean chamber is 150 feet long. It descends at an angle of 26 degrees. It is barely wide enough for two men to pass each other, and it was cut through solid rock with copper chisels and wooden mallets. There were no power tools, no explosives, no modern engineering, only human muscle, fire, and obsession. Think about what that means in practice. A team of men would crawl into a passage that grew tighter with every foot of progress. The air at the far end was hot. It was stale. It smelled of sweat and burned oil and the fine white powder that copper leaves on stone when pushed beyond its limits. Every man in that tunnel knew that if the walls shifted, if the rock above cracked, there would be no escape, there would be no rescue, there would only be silence. And they kept going. Teams of workers worked in shifts around the clock. They breathed in limestone dust with every stroke of the chisel. Lung disease was not a condition, it was a certainty. Dozens of workers who entered those tunnels in their 20s were dead before they reached 40. The ancient Egyptians knew this, they sent them in anyway. The work was not voluntary. These were not free men building a monument for glory. Many were conscripted workers, fed just enough to keep them moving, housed in barracks that have since been excavated and studied. They slept in rows. They were organized like a military operation, and they worked until their bodies gave out. The barracks at Giza have been partially excavated. Archaeologists found the bones of workers who showed signs of healed fractures, bones that had been broken on the job and set well enough to return the man to work. These were not people who stopped when they were injured. These were people who were repaired like equipment and sent back into the stone. Some of the skeletons found at Giza show evidence of amputations that were performed and survived, surgeries conducted in the field, not to save a life out of compassion, but to keep a useful body working as long as possible. The pyramid demanded everything, and it took everything. This is the hidden cost that the polished surface of the pyramid was designed to make the world forget. Now consider the scale of what was happening above ground at the same time. While the underground teams were carving in the dark, a completely separate workforce was operating on the surface. Quarrymen at Tura across the Nile were cutting the fine white limestone that would eventually coat the outer surface of the pyramid. Quarrymen at Aswan, 600 miles to the south, were cutting the massive granite blocks that would line the king's chamber. Boat crews were transporting those blocks down the Nile on wooden barges that have never been fully reconstructed. Ramp crews were dragging stone across the desert on sledges, pouring water ahead of the runners to reduce friction, in a system that required an estimated 40 men per block per haul. All of this was happening simultaneously, for 20 years, without a single machine. The logistics alone would have required a central planning organization more sophisticated than most governments that existed anywhere on Earth at that time. This was not primitive labor. This was industrial civilization operating without industry. And the men directing it all, and the engineers, the architects, the overseers, they knew something the workers did not. They knew what was being built below. They knew why it had been abandoned. And they knew that the mountain of stone rising above the plateau was not just a tomb. It was a lid. The subterranean chamber is roughly 46 feet long and 27 feet wide. At its highest point, it is just over 11 feet tall. But the most disturbing feature is not its size. It is the pit. In the floor of the subterranean chamber, there is a shaft. It drops straight down. Its purpose is unknown. Its depth has never been fully measured. Some researchers believe it was a symbolic passage to the underworld. Others believe it was a ventilation shaft connected to a deeper tunnel system. And a small but growing group of geologists and archaeologists believe it may connect to a hidden chamber that has never been explored. When modern explorers first entered the subterranean chamber, with proper lighting in the 19th century, they described the pit as disturbing in a way they found difficult to explain. It was not just the darkness, it was the shape. The walls of the pit are perfectly vertical. The corners are sharp. This is not a natural formation. Someone cut this. Someone decided that the floor of the most important underground chamber in the ancient world needed a hole in it that goes down into the dark, and then they stopped before they told anyone why. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, a technology that measures cosmic ray particles passing through solid matter, and detected a massive void inside the Great Pyramid above the Grand Gallery. A void the size of a full-length aircraft, a space that had never been documented, a space that had been hidden inside the pyramid for 4,500 years. The discovery made international headlines for 3 days. Then the story disappeared. The Egyptian authorities acknowledged the void and immediately said it required no further investigation. A space the size of a passenger jet, hidden inside the most studied building in human history, and the official response was, "Nothing to see here." If there is a hidden chamber above, what is hidden below? Nobody has answered that question. Not officially. Not yet. The tunnels beneath Giza are not a modern theory. They are documented history. The ancient historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt around 450 BC, wrote that Khufu built his tomb on an island surrounded by water channels drawn from the Nile, beneath the pyramid. Herodotus was not writing fiction. He was recording what the Egyptian priests told him. An underground island, a water channel, a tomb sealed not just by stone, but by a river. No one has found it. That does not mean it does not exist. Consider what water beneath the Giza plateau would mean. The Nile sits just a few miles away. The water table beneath the plateau has been measured and documented. In ancient times, when the Nile flooded annually and the water table was significantly higher, it is entirely plausible, geologically plausible, that a system of underground water channels could have been engineered beneath the pyramid. Herodotus described this with specific detail. He described an island. Islands require water on all sides. Someone built something that required protection not just from above, but from all directions. What is so important that you surround it with a river underground? In 1978, a Japanese team from Waseda University conducted seismic surveys beneath the Giza plateau and detected anomalies deep below the surface, spaces that should not be there if the rock was solid. Their findings were published, questioned, and quietly set aside. The Egyptian authorities restricted further independent investigation. In 1993, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robotic camera up a narrow shaft inside the pyramid. The robot traveled up the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber and after 210 feet stopped. Blocking the path was a small stone door with 2 copper handles. Behind that door was another shaft, and behind the next door, discovered in 2002, was a small chamber. Inside, red ochre markings on the wall. A sealed space untouched for 4.5 millennia. No human had seen those marks since the pyramid was built. Think about what that means. Not a single person had breathed the air in that space in 4,500 years. The marks on the wall were left by a worker who was told to seal that room and walk away forever. That worker is long dead. Everyone who gave the order is long dead. Everyone who knew the reason is long dead. And the marks are still there. These are not rumors. These are documented discoveries. And they raise a question that no official report has answered. If we found hidden doors and hidden chambers in the shafts above, what is sealed in the rock below? The construction of the subterranean chamber has always puzzled engineers, not because of what was completed, but because of what was not. The chamber is rough, unfinished, the floor is uneven. The walls show the marks of abandoned work. In some places, the stone is still raw, as if the workers put down their tools mid-stroke and never returned. This is not what you do when you finish a project. This is what you do when something goes wrong. There are three possible explanations for an abandoned underground chamber at the center of the most ambitious construction project in the ancient world. The first, the engineers changed the plan and decided to build the burial chamber higher up in the pyramid instead. This is the explanation found in most textbooks. It is clean, it is logical, and it completely ignores the fact that the chamber was not just abandoned, it was sealed and never discussed again. The second explanation, they hit something, a geological fault, a void, an existing tunnel, something in the rock that the ancient engineers could not safely build around. And rather than solve the problem, they closed the door and moved on. The third explanation is the one that no academic paper will write. They found something down there that they were not looking for, something that changed the plan entirely, something important enough to bury 2,300,000 stone blocks over. Ancient construction projects were abandoned for specific reasons: a structural fault, a discovery, a command from above. When the most powerful ruler in the ancient world orders work stopped and sealed, you do not ask questions. You seal the passage, you move the workforce above ground, and you begin placing stones over the secret as fast as possible. Over the following 20 years, more than 2,300,000 stone blocks were placed above the subterranean chamber. Each block weighed an average of 2.5 tons. The largest weighed over 80 tons and had to be transported from quarries hundreds of miles away. The entire operation required more logistical coordination than any military campaign of the ancient world. They built a mountain over whatever was down there, a mountain of stone, 480 feet tall, built to last forever, built to make sure no one ever went back. What were they covering? The Giza Plateau is not just the home of the Great Pyramid, it is the home of an entire underground city. In the 1990s, a researcher named John Anthony West and geologist Robert Schoch conducted a geological analysis of the Sphinx and its enclosure. Their conclusion was explosive. The erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx were caused not by wind and sand, but by water, heavy rainfall, the kind of rainfall that has not occurred in Egypt for over 10,000 years. That means the Sphinx, and potentially the tunnels beneath it, are far older than any mainstream chronology acknowledges. We are not talking about a few extra centuries. We are talking about thousands of years before the date that Egyptology has assigned to its construction. Thousands of years before Khufu, thousands of years before the Old Kingdom, thousands of years before written history in the Nile Valley even begins. If the Sphinx is that old, then whoever built it was operating from a level of civilization that we have completely erased from our understanding of human history. And if that civilization built the Sphinx, what else did they build? And where did they put it? Beneath the Giza Plateau, there is a network of natural limestone caves that has been partially documented. Spelunkers and researchers who have entered sections of this network have reported chambers large enough to stand in, passages that extend far beyond where they were allowed to go, and in at least one documented case, carved stonework in sections of tunnel that appear to predate the pyramid by a significant margin. Those reports have been dismissed. The researchers were not permitted to return. In 2008, Egyptian geologist Farouk El-Baz confirmed that there are large underground spaces beneath the Giza Plateau, consistent with ancient riverbeds and water-carved caverns. He estimated that some of these spaces are large enough to hold entire structures. Let that land for a moment. There are spaces beneath the Giza Plateau large enough to hold entire structures, structures that may have been placed there before the pyramid was ever built. before Khufu, before the Old Kingdom, before the Egypt that history textbooks describe. We do not know what is down there. That is the truth, and the truth is more shocking than any theory. Here is what we know with certainty. The Great Pyramid contains passages that were never meant to be found. It contains chambers that were sealed before the structure was completed. It contains a subterranean level that was abandoned mid-construction and never explained. It sits on a plateau riddled with geological anomalies, and multiple independent scientific investigations using multiple different technologies have all detected the same thing. There is more. There is something below. Something large, something hidden. And here is what we also know. Every attempt to investigate further has been restricted, delayed, or quietly denied. The Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities has approved very few independent investigations since the 1990s. The permits required to conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys beneath the plateau are extraordinarily difficult to obtain. The scientists who have published anomalous findings have often found their access revoked. In some cases, equipment brought to the site for authorized scans was turned away at the last moment without explanation. Why protect an empty hole? You do not protect an empty hole, you protect what is inside it. Think about every other archaeological site in the world. Think about how eagerly governments and institutions promote excavations, discoveries, new findings. Think about how the discovery of a new tomb, a new artifact, a new inscription generates headlines and tourism and international prestige. Egypt has built its entire modern identity around the monuments of the ancient world. Every new discovery is celebrated, except here, except beneath the pyramid, except in the one place where the anomalies are strongest, where the historical accounts are most specific, and where the technology to investigate without damaging anything already exists. The refusal to investigate is itself a form of information. Now consider the well shaft. Deep inside the pyramid, connecting the descending passage to the ascending passage, there is a vertical shaft that drops approximately 175 feet. It passes through the rock of the pyramid and descends to a grotto, a natural cave, embedded in the bedrock of the plateau. This grotto was known in the ancient world. It was incorporated into the design of the pyramid deliberately. The builders of the pyramid knew this cave was here. They built around it. They connected it to the internal passage system. Why would the builders of a royal tomb need a connection to a natural cave in the bedrock beneath the pyramid? What was in that cave that needed to be accessible from inside the structure? No one has answered that question. The grotto has been examined. It contains no inscriptions, no artifacts, no obvious explanation, just an empty natural space, deliberately incorporated into the most carefully engineered structure of the ancient world. Empty natural spaces are not deliberately incorporated into carefully engineered structures, not unless they connect to something else. 4,500 years ago, a civilization that we still do not fully understand built the most precise large structure ever constructed by human hands. They aligned it to the cardinal points of the compass with an accuracy that modern engineers struggle to replicate. They moved stones that modern cranes would find challenging. They quarried, transported, shaped, and placed over 2 million individual blocks in approximately 20 years. And then they buried the most important part of all of it underground and never told anyone what it was. The Great Pyramid stands above the desert as the most studied monument in human history. Hundreds of thousands of researchers, tourists, engineers, archaeologists, and historians have walked its passages, measured its chambers, and written their conclusions. And after all of that study, after centuries of investigation, we still do not know its true purpose. We still cannot replicate its construction. We still have not mapped everything beneath it. Think about what that means. Think about how strange that is. In a world where we can map the surface of Mars, where we can detect gravitational waves from black holes a billion light-years away, we cannot tell you with certainty what is underneath the most famous building on Earth. The workers who carved the subterranean chamber knew. The men who sealed it knew, Khufu knew. And somewhere in the rock beneath the Giza plateau, 4,500 years of silence is still keeping that secret. Every civilization that has ever stood at the base of the Great Pyramid has looked up. The Romans looked up. The Arabs looked up. Napoleon looked up. Every tourist, every photographer, every engineer who has ever visited Giza has tilted their head back and stared at the point where the stone meets the sky. Nobody looks down, but the answer has never been above. It has always been below. It was below before the first stone was placed. It was below when the workers sealed the chamber and climbed back into the light. It was below when the pyramid was completed and the white limestone casing reflected the sun across the Nile Valley like a mirror made of mountains. It is still below now. The pyramid does not point to the sky. It points to the ground, and whatever is beneath it is still waiting to be found.